Good morning, mathematicians. Happy Wednesday. 2 more wake-ups. Today I have uploaded for you guys some extra practice on what you were doing yesterday. Overall, everything looked pretty good for the most part. I saw when completing the square, we were struggling a little bit with simplifying the square root. If it's not a perfect square, it's okay to keep that in your answer. So I put that specific example today to help us. I'm going to model these 4 examples for you, and then I give you 4 below that's doing the same exact thing, okay? So let's start with A. Notice I have a quadratic function here. I just rewrote it on my whiteboard. So x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 8x minus 2. I see my highest power here is to the second, so I know it's a quadratic function. So I'm thinking, I'm asking you to solve it by factoring. Before I even go ahead and think of what factoring method I need to use, I'm already thinking I have variables on the opposite side of my equation. So I already know that I need to bring everything together. So I'm going to perform my inverse operations and move that 8x and 2 over to my other side. So I'm going to have to subtract 8x and add 2. And I'm going to combine it with those like terms over here. So I'm going to subtract 8x and then I'm going to add 2 over here. So then I'm going to have x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. And again, we always want it to be equal to 0. The whole purpose of that is so that way we can apply the zero product law. And a reminder, when we're applying the zero product law, we are taking everything and we are setting it equal to 0. So now I'm thinking in my head, okay, I have 3 terms here. I have a value or a leading coefficient of 1. So I either have to use ABC method or GCF. So I'm looking at my 3 terms and I already see okay, there is no GCF here. So I have to use ABC method. So my C value is equal to negative 10. And I'm going to start listing factors of negative 10. So I know negative 1 and 10. Negative 2 and 5, negative 5 and 2. Okay, now I'm seeing which of these pairs here are going to add up to a negative 3, which leaves me with my last one there. So I'm going to have x minus 5, x plus 2 equals 0. I'm still applying that zero product law. If you're ever doubting yourself or doubting if you factored something correctly, remember we can always redistribute out my answers to make sure that they are correct. So if I start to FOIL everything out, I know I'm going to get x squared, and then I'm going to get a positive 2x, minus 5x, minus 10. Some of you guys yesterday stopped here, and that's the problem because I'm solving. It's asking you to solve, which means I need to have x equals a number. So this is the part now where I'm just going to go ahead and split my factors, and I'm setting each of them equal to 0. And I have x plus 2 equals 0. And I'm going to solve for x. So here I'm going to add 5 to both sides, which just meant x is equal to 5. Here I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, which meant x is equal to negative 2. So those are my 2 solutions. Those are my, what we like to call the zeros. Those are my roots. Those are my x-intercepts. They all mean the same thing. And since it's my x-intercepts, I would ask you in class, how could I write this as an ordered pair? And you would say, oh, it's so easy, miss. 5, 0 and negative 2, 0. All right, let's go to example B. So B, again, I'm giving you a quadratic, and I'm asking you to solve by completing the square. Completing the square you guys had yesterday on your worksheet. So I have it copied over here. And same process, like I'm thinking in my head, I don't have everything equal to 0. So I need to perform those inverse operations and bring everything to one side. If you're feeling comfortable, you can do it all in one step. If not, start by adding 3x over. Then subtract the 4, whatever makes your life easier. I'm going to combine those like terms. And this whole thing is equal to 0. That's exactly what I want. And I'm going to have x squared. I'm going to have a minus 12x. And then I'm going to have a plus 20. All right. Now, again, directions said completing the square. So now that I have my quadratic, everything combined, this is really the quadratic that I'm completing the square. I want to get it in vertex form. And then I'm going to solve it. So my first step, I need to move my c value over to the other side. So the problem here was I didn't know what my c value was because I had a 24 and I also had this 4. Now that I combine them, I know that 20 is my c value. So I'm subtracting 20. I'm going to have x squared minus 12x equals negative 20. My next step here is to make sure that my leading coefficient of my quadratic is equal to 1. And if not, then I need to pull that out as a GCF. You're welcome. My leading coefficient is equal to 1. So that allows me to go to that next step, which is I want to form a trinomial here. Like, what is this term going to be? And that's when I take my b value, divide it by 2, and square it. So I'm going to look at negative 12, my b value. I'll do it over here. Negative 12, and I'm dividing that by 2, which is going to give me a negative 6. But then when I square that, when I raise it to the second power, that's giving me 36. So I should be adding 36 here, and I should be adding 36 to this side. Otherwise, I do not have a balanced equation. 12x plus 36 equals negative 20 plus 36. Okay. I'm going to do two things at once. Once, I'm going to get rid of these nonsense and combine them together as a positive 16. Over here, I'm going to factor this trinomial. We should be a pro at factoring because we just factored using the ABC method over there. So I'm looking at my c value, which is 36. And I'm listing my factors, 1 and 36, 6 and 6. Oh, I need them to add up to a negative 12. Well, here, this is adding up to a positive 12. So all I know that I need to do is make that negative. So I'm going to have x minus 6 times x minus 6. And since I'm writing the same thing twice, I'm trying to get this in vertex form, I know that this is the same exact thing. That allows me to write this as x minus 6 squared equals 16. So normally, I would bring this 16 over by subtracting it. And I would write like x minus 6 squared minus 16 equals y, and that's my equation. But my directions here are saying to solve, which means I want to move everything away from x. So I'm actually going to keep my 16 over here. You guys just completed the square perfectly, but I'm not done. Some of you guys yesterday stopped here. I need to keep going to complete the square. I want to solve for x. So over here, I have this entire thing raised to the second power. I want to get rid of that exponent. So the only way I can get rid of that exponent is by taking the square root of both sides, because I'm always trying to keep my equation balanced. And when I take the square root, that just leaves me with whatever is underneath it, which is just x minus 6. And here, I know that the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. A few of you guys yesterday forgot the plus or minus. That broke my heart. Don't forget it. Anytime you take the square root, that plus or minus needs to be there. And you're not done because this is saying x minus 6. Well, I need to have x equals. So the only thing I have left to do is just add 6 to both sides here. Some of you guys yesterday were writing like x equals 6 plus or minus 4. That should be a plus. Well, these are both numbers, so let's just combine them together. One of those solutions is saying 6 plus 4, and the other one is saying 6 minus 4. So go ahead and actually combine those to get your solutions. So I know that's going to give me 10, and this is going to give me 2. And those are my x-intercepts here, or my zeros, or my roots. Bam. That's it. Alright, so those were the first 2 examples. Hopefully they were not that bad. This is a continuation of what you did yesterday. If you need to pause the video, obviously, to re-understand a concept or copy something else down, please go ahead and do so. This is actually the cool thing about learning virtually. You guys have the freedom to stop and rewind and go back when you need to. But I am erasing my whiteboard so that way we can go ahead and go to C and D. Looking at C and D, I'm asking you to use the quadratic formula. They are quadratic functions, I just get so excited. I'm asking you to use your quadratic formula for both of them. So, I posted the reference sheet on the Google Classroom, and I'll attach it for today as well, but your quadratic formula is given to you on this reference sheet. Again, you just need to find it, which is in the same spot it always was during class. Alright, so let's start with C here. Notice my directions are saying express your answer to the nearest tenth and express your answer in simplest radical form. I'm going to pick one of these 2 to do. Let's see. Let's go with nearest tenth. So I'm going to do C. I'll add D for you guys today. First thing, always, I need to make sure everything is set equal to 0. I have this 5x plus 15 here. I already know that I should be doing the inverse operation and bringing everything over to one side. That way they eliminate and I just have 0 over here. So I'm going to combine those like terms. So I'm going to have minus 5x minus 15. X squared. Notice those are both negative, so you should be keeping that sign and adding those terms. And if you're not sure, you know that I made you download a graphing calculator, so you better use it. Alright, perfect. That is my new quadratic function here. Again, my highest power is still raised to the second. I have 3 terms. I'm using that quadratic formula, which I already know means that I need to go ahead and identify like what is my A, my B, and my C value. And I know it's been some time, so a reminder, we're always comparing it to the standard form of a quadratic, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So my A value is always next to my x squared. My B value is always next to x, and C is always the number or the constant by itself. So here, my A value, I see my x squared. A reminder, we're in math, we only like numbers. So I'm talking about the number that's in front of that x squared, which is a 1. My B value is a negative 8, and my C value is 1. Okay? Now you guys are just going to straightforward looking at your quadratic. Anywhere I see a B value, I'm now plugging in negative 8, because that's what we said B was. Anywhere I see an A, I'm plugging in 1. And anywhere I see a C, I am plugging in 1 as well in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and write this negative 8, because that's what my B value is. Plus or minus, that's staying there. There's nothing I can do. Square root, nothing I can do. So B squared, I'm replacing B with negative 8. Then I'm going to have this minus 4. And then my a value we said 1, and c we said was 1. And I'm dividing that whole thing by 2 times 1. So that's my quadratic formula here with everything substituted. Now again, this is when in class I say to you guys like, okay, what should we focus in on simplifying first? And then you guys always say underneath the square root. So I'm focusing in specifically on this. I can go ahead and make this double negative here a positive. So I'm going to rewrite this as positive 8 plus or minus square root. And now I'm looking, okay, negative 8 squared. Straightforward calculator question. Make sure you're putting that negative in parentheses because I know it's going to give me a positive, specifically a positive 64. Now I'm going to multiply negative 4 times 1 times 1, which is just going to give me a negative 4. And I'm dividing that whole thing by 2 times 1, or just 2. Look at how much better that already looks. But again, I still have like these numbers underneath my square root there. I have 64 minus 4. It only makes sense to combine those. So I'm going to have 8 plus or minus the square root of 60 divided by 2. Okay? Now I want you guys to notice my directions for C said solve with the quadratic formula, express your answer to the nearest tenth. So I don't even want you guys to stress yourself out by trying to simplify this in simplest radical form. At this point, I would go straight to your calculator, which, let me get mine. I accidentally moved it. Okay. So I would go ahead and just go right to your calculator, but separate your two answers here. So I know that this really means one is saying 8 plus square root of 60 divided by 2, and your other one is saying 8 minus square root of 60 divided by 2. And then at this point, it's a straight calculator question, and I will show you how I'm typing it into my calculator. Okay, so I'm hitting 8 plus, I'm going to do the plus one first, square root of 60. And I'm hitting enter. But I'm not done because I'm dividing that whole thing by 2. And when I do that, I get 7.872, that long decimal. But I'm asking you to express it to the nearest tenth. So I know this really means that x is equal to 7.9 when rounded properly. And I'm doing the same exact thing now, but focusing in on a subtraction sign in between that 8. So I'm going to do 8 minus the square root of 60. And then I'm dividing that whole thing by 2. Again, rounded to the nearest tenth. So that's going to give me with x equals 0.1 or x equals 0.1. That should be a 1, sorry. And those are your solutions. Alright, so I left you with 4 examples below that you need to complete. 2 of them are by factoring. Thinking mind, ABC method, AC grouping, wink for the first one, GCF, dots, ABC, you know the deal. Completing the square, we did one of those. Quadratic formula, we did one of those. Make sure you express it in simplest radical form. Good luck, be great, have fun, talk to you later.